Stu, welcome, man. I'm so glad that you came to sit down with me. I'm really excited about us.
Well, I'm excited about being here, Les.
Yeah. So normally we start by asking, about your first love to Jesus. But before we do that, I wanted you to, tell me about yourself, how you describe yourself when people ask you those kind of things. Tell me about you a little bit.
So I would describe myself as an introvert.
Introvert.
Yes.
So this is a little challenges for you.
Absolutely.
Right. It's all right.
But I'm with good people, so I'll be calm through this process.
Awesome.
And I would say that I'm a husband, father, grandfather, brother, son, uncle. Yeah. Those are all things. Family is big for me. So that's my main description, most important of all, a child of God.
Yeah. So career-wise, then wasn't in that, but I know that you've been a corporate member for many, many years.
Yes, with one company coming up to 25 years.
Yeah, that's the mouse, right?
That's the mouse. But there was a break. It was like 12 years, a 6-year break, and then back for the 12, headed to 13. So.
Okay. All right. So this is our normal question, right?
Sure.
And we love God, so I'm going to ask you straight up. When did you first fall in love with Jesus?
So that's a great question. That's you kind of gave me a little hint you were going to ask this question. So I went back and reflected. Grew up in the church, had faithful grandparents who made sure me and my siblings were at church almost every Sunday. Right. So I was introduced to Jesus at that time, but it wasn't until my junior year in college, and I remember taking an engineering test. I thought it was the worst that I've ever done on a test. And I was leaving the dorm, got me headed back to the dorm and saying, I probably need to drop out of engineering. This is crazy. I should do something else. Mm-hmm. But this guy from Campus Crusade stopped me at the corner right before I got to the dormitory and asked me if I had a few minutes.
Okay.
And he shared the gospel with me. And in all those years I've been in church, I don't know if I just didn't hear it clearly to understand that I needed to put my faith in Jesus Christ. And it wasn't about church attendance or your grandparents being good Christians. So he shared the gospel. I remember praying for salvation at that time. And
with him? You prayed
with him.
Okay.
Because before he left, he said, do you want to pray? He had walked through, I call it the Romans road, because he picked like some scriptures right out of Romans to share with me.
Okay.
But he started out with the question, if you were to die today, are you 100% sure you would go to heaven? Right. And I was like, oh yeah, I go to church. I mean, he let me go on, and then he finally opened the Bible and showed me that I needed to put my faith in Jesus Christ. So right after that, I was already in the gospel choir at the university, but it had a totally different meaning now because now I knew who I was singing about personally, and it wasn't about just singing songs without having a relationship. Right. So I think that's when I started to fall in love with Jesus.
Okay. How old were you at that point?
19.
19.
Yes.
So you did grow up in the church.
Yes.
So were you a good kid? Or did you kind of have a prodigal son moment where
I was a good kid because I was the oldest of 10. So there wasn't a lot of room for me to do bad things.
All right.
But I think I was bad, but just got caught all the time. So then I started trying to be good, just not to get the heat of the parents and the grandparents. But the Bible says we all are born into sin, so I can't even say that I was good even when I thought I was good, because I wasn't good.
That's right. That's right.
And I needed a savior. I just didn't know until 19 that I did.
So did you, was there a time, did you ever fall away from being, quote unquote, a good Christian after that?
And remember I said I was in college when I became a Christian, but I wasn't really getting discipled.
Discipleship, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was going to a church literally that was right on campus, but I didn't have, I was in and out. Right. But there wasn't an older Christian person in my life teaching me and stuff. So, and I was in a fraternity. So you balance that. I'm in a fraternity. I'm just like a newborn Christian. And so I would say my first few years as a Christian, there was no spiritual growth because all I was doing was partying. Right. But, I wanted to still fit in with my fraternity brothers and being on campus. So it wasn't until I left college and got involved in the church. Yeah. When I was away from all that partying and stuff that I started growing. Right.
It's funny you say that, man. It's like the road that a few people we spoke to said the same thing. And the catchphrase for all through all of that is discipleship. Right. I mean, there is, man, some teaching that we need to keep us on track. But I think that, for me, I got first introduced, correct or incorrect, to God as through Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow.
And, in hindsight, it probably wasn't, it's certainly not Baptist, things like that. There's very, polar opposite in some of the core beliefs.
Yep.
There was, during that time, there was, this whole thing, their Bible and our Bible. I used to, Will Downing, Will Downing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
He and I went to high school together, and we used to have these, he was in the Baptist church and I was going through that. And we used to be at lunch in Erasmus Hall and kind of debate over the scriptures. And it was just one of those things. That's my famous Will Downing story. But he's
wow.
Yeah, but that was such a long time ago, man.
And I bet he was hitting you with the word, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. And we were just, it was me as the Jehovah's Witness, him as the Baptist, and there was another young lady who was a Pentecost. And man, we used to have debates about a whole ton of things in the lunchroom at Erasmus Hall High School back in, I don't even know, 70s, 1970, 77, 78, 79.
Wow.
So it was years ago. Shout out to you, Will Downing. But anyway, that discipleship piece is serious, but I left them, the Witnesses, some years later, but and stayed away from God until Antioch. And Mo going to Antioch and being really taking the reading of the scripture serious, and we'd have those debates, and she's like, when you gonna get your life right? Kind of stuff.
She loves you. She wanted you to.
She wanted me to go to heaven.
We have good wives.
Right.
They both want us to grow spiritually.
Yeah. So that was the thing that brought me back to Christ. And I think that during that period is when I fell in love with him. And
I love that. I didn't know about the Jehovah's Witness part.
Yeah. And I, my arrogance kept me, oh, y'all don't know what y'all talking about. I know more about the scriptures than you'll ever know, blah, 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 for many, many years.
Wow.
But, it takes God's grace and mercy to break your heart down.
That's right.
Put that little crack in your heart to get you there.
That's right.
So, but the nucleus of all of that is discipleship.
Yep.
Pastor Thomas was the one who took me under his wing.
Oh, he's serious about helping people to grow.
And his whole process for discipleship early on, and then Leroy through the whole Purple Book thing created that baseline for discipleship for me. When you did start going back and you started being discipled properly, was there any one person in your?
Yes. His name is Richard Allen Farmer. He was the pastor that at the church that Renita and I met at.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know, well, I shouldn't say I don't know. I think God put it on his heart to ask me if I wanted to do a discipleship program with him. Okay. So I met with him once a week on Tuesdays. Yeah. He would give me these challenging questions, passages to read, and then he would say, come back and then ask your questions and stuff like that. So for a year, I went through that with him. And I didn't really know at the beginning, like, why is he doing this? And, do I want to do this every week? But at the end of the year, I was like, man, the year went so fast. And then I didn't know that at the time. I would meet Renita through he and his wife, because they were pastoring the church, which he was pastoring the church. But he was the first person I could say definitely poured into me and challenged me in my faith.
So here's one question I just love. It's like, because part of these questions is the belief that I have that, sometimes you'll get into a debate about God being real. I forget who he recently had a debate with somebody who was having arguments with an atheist about God's existence. And for me, I think when you see the impact on on people's lives through God and getting closer to him. So all that to say, my question is, how did the discipleship journey change your behavior?
I realized that a lot of things I thought was right wasn't right, and that I needed to depend on God. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, trust in the Lord in all your ways, and lean not unto your own understanding. Yeah. And I think I was arrogant, and I thought because I always did well in school, I was in engineering, I just had an arrogant, like I knew everything. Yeah. And it was humbling to say I don't know anything,
Right.
to come to that and realize I have to depend on God in every situation. Even, and it took time, but even in the small things, we should still depend on him before we make decisions.
Yeah.
So
That was same thing, Pastor Thomas. My first issue was control, right? I mean, that arrogance for young men who do well, it's like, I must
Right.
know what I'm doing, right? I'm successful. I got this. I make a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And it's really hard to give up that control. But Pastor Thomas gave me a scripture, Proverbs 16:9. It's in a man's heart to plan his way.
Yeah.
The Lord directs his steps, right?
Yes.
And I was like, yo, this is deep. And then Mo and I were like, Mo and I went through all the discipleship stuff. So you got to give up control and all this. God is in charge of your life. You can't control anything, blah, blah, blah. And she was right. Bottom line, she was right? So, but
Absolutely.
it really took a lot of discipleship to like create that long-lasting behavior and trust in God. And I think that became for me the foundation of my faith. At some point when things seem out of control, I know that he's in control.
That's right.
And that provides a certain amount of comfort.
That's hope.
Yeah.
Because it's not man who ultimately gets us where we need to go. It's our hope in the one who can.
Yeah.
And Psalms 121, Renita used to sing that song from Brooklyn Tabernacle, Psalms 121.
Yeah.
But the one verse in there I love is where it says, he never slumbers or sleeps.
Wow.
Because then I don't have to stay up at night because God is awake.
And I can sleep good, right?
That's right. Now, Renita says I need more hours of sleep, but 6 hours for me, I'm good to go for at least part of the day.
Well, that's always one of the things I respected about you most is that your attention to detail and your work ethic was just a great example for me. I thought I was good at a lot of things, but, like I said, you have salary and job and all that stuff to kind of validate your level of how you feel about yourself. But, when if you care about being excellent at what you do, then you stand next to people who also care. And you can see where you might need a little bit more. Iron sharpens iron.
It does.
Right?
I thought the same thing about you because I remember at Antioch, you and Darren,
my boy Darren. We're going to get him on.
Try to help.
Put him in the hot seat one day, yeah.
With our, building campaign. Y'all came with your materials and stuff. I was like, oh man, I want to work with them. You did the presentation. And I was like, they got it together. Y'all didn't come in like half stepping. You had answers. I mean, I don't know if we were ready at that time for what you all presented, but it was, like you said, when you see that kind of stuff, you're inspired. Yeah. And so I thought, wow.
That was a good time though.
It was.
Not everything worked out perfectly as intended, but we both know that whatever God's will is his will, not ours. So we got to kind of.
That's right.
So that's cool. Antioch is doing all right. And so is Darren, so are you, so am I, So you mentioned engineering in school. Where did you go to school?
University of Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Okay. Yeah. Is that Ivy League?
No. Carnegie Mellon is right down the street.
Okay. All right. I'm thinking of Penn.
You're thinking of Penn.
Okay. Wharton and all that stuff. But But in engineering, you graduated with that? Engineering? What? I never knew this now.
Yeah, civil engineering.
Civil engineering. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now what is that? I know Mo has a double engineer. I know that's electronics and things like that.
So
civil engineering.
Each of the engineering disciplines has, electrical was to me way too technical. Civil was more about buildings, bridges, roads, stuff like that. And so when you see these guys out doing surveying for land and stuff, they're pulling in materials so that they can build, make sure they have the right foundations and stuff. So I like that because that's creative. Yeah. The civil engineering, you got to create some of the stuff, working with architectures on how things should look. So I like that.
We touch on creativity on this podcast, so we're gonna get on that. But did you ever work in the field?
Yes, when I graduated, I worked with BF Goodrich in Akron, Ohio, for a couple years, and it was strange because back then we hear about STEM now, but back in the 70s there were no blacks or females going into engineering. So I ended up at Pitt. I wanted to be a math teacher. Mm-hmm. All through school, I kept saying I want to be a math because I excelled in math. Well, this guy came to our high school and said, you do well in math and science. Why don't you go into engineering? Now, this is how ignorant I was. I thought, why do I want to drive a train? Because that was the only time I ever heard the word engineering, honestly. So, and I was like, no, I'm not interested in driving trains. I want to be a math teacher. And I know he must have thought this poor kid, but then he introduced me to engineering and said, you know, we have scholarships at University of Pittsburgh. We have a program that's responsible for recruiting minorities and females to go into engineering. And you based on your grades and stuff, you could get a scholarship. And I was like, okay, I need a scholarship to go to school. So I said, okay, I'll do engineering. So that's how I ended up in engineering.
Nice. So at BF Goodrich.
So at Goodrich, because I was the first Black engineer there.
Wow. Okay.
They wanted me to go in the schools in the Akron area and talk to students about engineering. And they wanted me on this way before the word diversity. It was really a committee to talk about how they could bring more minorities to work at Goodrich.
Okay.
So when I was doing that, I was like, I kind of like this, but it wasn't engineering. It was more like reaching other people to go into that field. So I ended up back at Pitt being the recruiter for minority students. And that's when I said, okay, I need to get an MBA because I really want to practice engineering anymore. I like this whole thing about reaching other people to go into the field. So I got my MBA and then went into HR because that was the most closely related field to like reaching people to help them with disciplines and how to decide what they want to do. And
now all this was happening at BF Goodrich?
I left Goodrich and went back to Pitt.
Gotcha.
To do the recruiting. After 2 years at Goodrich, I was like, okay, I know what I want to do. I ended up in the very job of the person who came and recruited me because he had left. And since I had finished engineering, I could really talk to the students about what it takes and, you know, not paint a rosy picture, let them know it's difficult. You got to be disciplined. You got to go to school. You got to study. So it just did more because I was an engineer, a graduate of engineering, that I could reach students and talk to them about the realities.
Now you had met Renita during this time frame?
No, I didn't meet Renita until it was in grad school.
Grad school. Okay. All right. So we won't go there yet. So I want to make sure I got it right. You were at BF Goodrich, left there, went to work at Pitt.
Correct.
In the recruitment process for engineering for minorities as a focus. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So you left Pitt at some point.
Yeah. When I got my MBA, then Westinghouse was headquartered in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And they had a rotational program for human resources. So I said, okay, this is good because I don't know exactly which field in HR I want to go into because it's very broad.
Yeah.
So I went to Goodrich, and for that first year, I spent 3 months in employee relations, 3 months in labor relations, dealing with the unions.
Okay.
3 months as a recruiter. And then the last 3 months was when I was in compensation.
Okay.
That's when it clicked because I was you're still using a lot of analytical skills, which was my background with engineering. You're doing a lot of analysis, forecasting, decision-making, looking at surveys and coming up with results.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the best thing.
Yeah.
And so all the time that I've been in HR since then, every year but one, I was in compensation. I spent 1 year as an HR generalist, and I was like, no,
that's not the one, right?
And I went back to compensation again.
That's cool, man. That matches up with your introvert personality,
it
right?
Does.
You can sit there and deal with all these numbers. And
the good thing is you get to go and present that stuff, but you feel confident because you've done the analysis. So when I feel confident about something, I can go and talk, and then it drains me to have to do all that, but then I can go back and do my number crunching again.
I used to work for a lady who was an introvert, and man, she was also dyslexic, and she used to say, man, I come in the morning, but by 3 o'clock, I'm exhausted because it's just a lot to push against the introverted personality, and she was dealing with some other things as well.
Wow.
But it was interesting, you know, how people overcome those things for the sake of the job, right?
Exactly.
The job requires these things. So, all right, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. You are back in discipleship. You are at this church.
Yes.
You are you met Renita. And now, what age were you guys when you met?
Okay, it was in the 80s. So I was
be careful because she's going to see this show, and if you
so
get it wrong.
I was in my Late 20s, actually.
Late 20s, okay.
Because by the time I got out of grad school, I was almost 30. And
it don't matter. How long you been married?
36 years.
36, man, that's a big number, dude.
Well, it's 35 and 9 months, but
okay.
I rounded it to the nearest
Way
number.
to get past that.
I just want to be sure I can take exact. So, so we met in a singles group at church.
A singles group, okay.
And it's funny because...
those things work.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I joined it because we did a lot of fun stuff as singles, but I wasn't joining like to find a wife. I was joining just because we were doing a lot of stuff. Another opportunity to grow spiritually. Yeah. But Renita and her brother were in... the singles group, but I thought, because they always were together, I thought they were dating. Because I didn't figure out they were sister and brother. They never announced they were sister and brother. Then finally, the pastor's wife told me that, no, that's her brother. So then the rest is history.
Gotcha. 36 years, man. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot. I know you spent a little time in Dallas.
Yes.
What drove you were here in Orlando, of course.
At the Mouse House.
At the Mouse House and with Antioch. And then you guys went to Dallas.
Yes.
What drove that? Can you share?
Yes, a good friend of mine. We both started out at Westinghouse in that same program I was talking about. Yeah. And he ended up being a vice president of HR for a company called Alliance in Dallas. Mm-hmm. And he knew I was still in comp and he needed a comp VP. Mm-hmm. So he reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in going to Dallas? Like, at first I was like, no. And then Renita's like, yes, you are. But, in hindsight, it was a good experience. I always say we went there to find our daughter-in-law because now that's where Marcus found. And she was the only person Marcus dated. Yeah. And they were dating in high school and then they got married. But it's funny, it feels like I was looking at the Bible, how people went and they would find their bride or and then move back to their hometown. So our youngest one never liked the fact we moved to Dallas. And he told us the day we moved there, he was moving back to Florida when he got out of high school. Okay. Well, he led the way back because when he ended up coming back, we all packed up and came too. Okay. So that's how we ended up back here after 6 years.
After 6 years?
Yeah, we were there in Dallas for 6 years.
There was a church you were working at. What was the name?
There was two churches. The first one, when we got there, was North Dallas Community Bible Fellowship.
That's the one that my mother-in-law
Your mother-in-law goes.
That's right. Yes. We visited that church. Yep. And I remember taking some pictures like, dude, look where we are. Yes. You guys kind of helped build that church, right?
No, that one was already established. There was a second church that we went to. That's the one we helped. Because North Dallas had been in that community for decades. Yeah. And Les Smith, the pastor there, he started it. I could see where you could have thought we did because he started a Bible study in his home and then it moved to a hotel and then it ended up being a church. Gotcha. But that was well before Renita and I got there.
We were just actually in Dallas last week, I think. And
did y'all go to North Dallas?
Yep.
Because you're out at the new property.
Yeah, at the new property. I forget the name of the church, but it definitely, we ran into him. They have another lead pastor, but he's working with the kids but he looks good. He's healthy. Him and his wife are doing fine. Good. And, but it's a small world basically, right? It's a small world.
Yeah, because when she told us that her mom goes to church in Dallas and then said the name, I'm like, what? But that's where we were the first couple years. Yeah. And then we went to a church that was just starting up. Okay. And it has like 5 campuses. Yeah. In Dallas, you're near the seminary. Everybody wants to leave DTS and start a church there. Yeah, yeah. But he came out of Tony Evans' church. He was one of the assistant pastors on the staff. Yeah. And then when it did his startup, so it's funny, we got training there because we were meeting in a hotel. Right. Okay. So we would get there, unload the trucks, load the trucks up.
Man, you've been on church plants for a long time.
That's where we got introduced to church plants. Right. And that's where we loved, because they entrusted us with a community group and we loved it because we could see the community group really was the church and we were fighting for each other's marriages. Yeah, yeah. The kids, we saw the kids growing up together. Yeah. So that probably is the thing I miss most about Dallas was that community group.
Yeah. So I gotta ask, man. So you were doing a lot of good work, but I'm sure you and I both have worked on different committees. Yeah. What was the toughest thing in this whole church doing church thing?
Oh,
I'm sure there's a lot, but anything rise to the top?
The toughest thing, I think. Okay, so here's the second story about being in Dallas. When we moved to that second church, because I went on staff at North Dallas Community.
Okay.
Like I left corporate America to be the church administrator.
Oh, okay. All right.
It was just premature in the timing because that's where I ultimately wanted to go, but the opportunity came up. So the VP who hired me left that company.
So you went down there to do compensation for HR at this other company, but ultimately
and then Alliance Data,
there.
when the person who recruited me left, I was like,
you don't need to stay.
Yeah, because we had a great working relationship, and I didn't know who was going to come in there. But at North Dallas, I was on their committee for fundraising because they were going to build that new property. So I was one of the people who they selected to be on that committee for the fundraising and stuff like that. So the pastor then said, hey, we need a church administrator. Would you be interested? And I was like, and I was going to DTS at the same time, Dallas Theological, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Theological Seminary?
Yes. Okay. And so I said, I talked to Renee and we said, sure. And then, when you get on the church staff, the curtain comes back and you see everything. And I was just, you were talking about this earlier, like administration's like a gift that I have. And when you see stuff that's not right, you want to change it. I should have approached it different because I was like a bull in the china shop. He hired me to get stuff together. Yeah. But there were staff members who were there just, I'm at a church. They're going to pay me whether I do anything or not. There's grace. And I was like, after all these years in corporate, I was like, how do we have the nerve to be lackadaisical in God's house about what he gives us responsibility for? I would never go to work and think, well, I'm at church. I don't have to do anything. Right. And so there was a clash. There was a cultural clash. So then after those 2 years of going through that, we went to, we heard about the church startup. Yeah. So we started going there for worship because it was hard to sit in. I was still on the staff at North Dallas, but we went to this other church. And it was weird because Sundays, they wanted me at North Dallas because of my role. And I was like, okay, something's got to give because I really want to be with Renita and the kids worshiping and with, at one community. And so then a job opened at one community, same job I was in at North Dallas. So I moved there. That was the hard part because it was a startup and I probably was working 80 hours a week. Wow. Because there was very small staff, but everything that needed to be done. So I was like, and it was draining. Yeah. Draining on me physically, emotionally, spiritually, which also impacted Renita and the kids because they hardly saw me. And I was like, this isn't how it's supposed to be. Yeah. And so that's probably the hardest, but that transition.
No, I mean, my takeaway is the curtain, right? Yeah. The curtain being pulled back is like, all of that comes with it. And I totally get it because you and I both know we've served in different capacities. Yes. And when you're in the room trying to figure out all these things, you realize that, even though we're all Christians, we're all human and we're all sinful. We're all imperfect. And, to Darren and Pastor Thomas's credit, he's like, he reminded me. I was like, this ain't supposed to be like this. I'm a new Christian. I'm just trying to help. And he goes, we're all imperfect. Yeah. We're all falling short from the kingdom of God. Everybody needs grace and mercy. Yes. So, so just remember that when you think about dealing with others. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that lesson was early on, probably a year or so into my being saved and at Antioch. And it helped. It helped kind of grease the wheels on a lot of committee meetings and things like that. You get annoyed with somebody and say, He's not perfect. He's not perfect.
That's right. That's right.
So, and it's been given to me. You know, because like you, I can be a bull in the china shop sometimes when you want something to go right.
Right.
And you don't understand why it can't be done right away.
Yeah.
So,
that's right.
So, so you and Renita are together. You got your two sons are in Dallas. Now comes the decision to come back to Orlando, and one of your sons.
Yeah, the youngest one, Curtis.
Curtis is I never get to see him, so I hardly ever remember his name. Forgive me, Curtis.
That's fine.
Yeah, but I know he was the driver.
Yeah.
But at some point, there was your decision to say, "All right, we out of here. Let's go back to Florida."
Yeah.
What was the point?
Like I was saying, the breaking point was something has to give here. I can't keep this working
the 80
schedule.
hour. Yeah.
And so then when we talked about and prayed about coming back to to Orlando, it's funny. I just called. I said, okay, I need to get a job first. So I went back to what I knew. I called the Mouse House and they had just posted a job. I didn't know. I just called and say, if you have any openings. And they said, when do you want to start? Like, I didn't even have to go through it.
Interview or nothing, huh?
I didn't go through any formal process.
That's okay.
But it was
it's
just
good to know some folks sometime, right?
And it's also, the lesson is also good to leave well.
Yeah.
Because I did, when I left the company, I left with a good reputation.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're like, I'm going to tell this person off before I go. Yeah. That doesn't do any good.
Or quit spectacularly.
Yeah. Yes.
I quit.
Yes. Yeah. And so that was a blessing to be able to, first have the opportunity to come back. And then that led the way for us knowing we could pack up and move back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that's about the time that we met, actually.
Yes.
I don't know what years it was, but I started coming to Antioch probably around 05, 06. Maybe 04. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we met right before we left. Mm-hmm. We met you. Because we definitely knew Monet before we left.
Okay.
But then when we came back in 2012.
Yeah, that's when
y'all were.
So I was avoiding, I would go to church on Easter, Christmas, and every once in a while when Monet got, come sit with me at church. And I'm like, oh, I got to listen to this Pastor Jones. Tear me to pieces about how bad I am. Right? But one day, I don't know what God used him and Monet to break my heart open.
Wow.
But between the both of them, he did it. And I'm sitting here saved by grace, but yeah, it had a lot to do with a lot of sermons. It was one sermon he gave on forgiveness, and I think he had the whole church weeping. But I think I was saved by then. But anyway, that sermon just, I could literally feel God tapping on my forehead. Mm-hmm. Okay, come on, get up there and give your life to me. And I was like, all right. Let me go up there. And that was about 2011, 2012, right before they were going on that trip to Israel.
Africa?
Israel. Everybody in the church went on a trip to Israel. But anyway.
Yeah, we must have gone back right after they did that then.
Yeah. So I just remember, like you said, you left well. So when I started to get on the strategic planning committee, Evelyn and you and all of, your name was like, you got to get Stu on this committee. If you want things to go right, you got to get Stu. So that's how we were introduced. But
yes.
We've had so I got to talk about Grace Alive a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So Grace Alive is the church that we are both at.
Yes.
And your role there has changed from just helping out to what do we call it? I always forget. Elder.
Yes.
Elder. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I remember, that transition was like, oh, so what does that mean? It's like, do we call him pastor? I was like,
just keep calling me Stewart.
But of course the joke is, hey, pastor. Pastor Stu, just to mess with you.
Yeah, what's funny is we ended up there because when we came back, we were at Antioch.
Yeah.
But all we heard about was this dynamic young pastor who was at Antioch as the young adult pastor. Because when we left Mac, Fernando was in that role.
Yeah.
So then I guess Renita might have heard first that they were starting a church and that Pastor Cam was.
We heard the same thing. Cam, Dave, and those guys were And I didn't know Cam well, but I knew he was very good at preaching and everything. And the few times I did hear him preach, I was like very impressed. So
same here.
And we were in a transitional moment ourselves. So, to go somewhere that's new and fresh with friends was a great opportunity. So it was a no-brainer for us at that time.
Yeah, it had, because that one community, it was multi-ethnic, all the age, the race, everything multi. And so when we saw it with the DNA of Grace Alive, that was what was attractive, because you can get comfortable in an all-black church or, we wanted to be, because heaven's not going to be all black or all white. People need to be, to practice worship with other people today.
Amen.
And so we were like, okay, this is exciting with the church startup. So we were like, let's go.
So, you had, we both had a tough time at Grace Alive, and we know that the church is winding down.
Yeah.
And for a whole lot of different reasons, but, has the experience kind of soured you into serving at that level or encouraged you? What do you think the pros and cons of your experience?
The pros are just I think one of the pros is that the effort was made to have a Grace Alive, because it's easy to get comfortable and say, let's just go to Antioch or let's just go here. But so I think that's a pro, because I thought it was very successful for many years.
No doubt.
And I see young people who are willing to move here from the Carolinas and other parts of the country to help start the church. Again, the community group, that's where we really got to know people well, being in that community group with and to see the young people who love God and wanted to serve, made sacrifices. That was all, to me, big pluses. And it's sad to see the death, that is coming to an end. That's the part that's hard. Because you saw the good, you saw the fruit, you saw the people grow. And now I've really lost touch with a lot of those people. So I don't know if they're, dealing with church hurt and they're not involved in the church, or they're cautious to make the same commitments somewhere else that they made at Grace Alive. That's what makes me sad.
Yeah, I agree. It's like the breakup is always around the people. Right? Buildings and process and songs and all this are cool, because we know that God's word is going to be heard one way or another, right? The one that I always rest on is that if you lift him up, and he'll draw.
He'll draw, man.
Right?
Yep.
And so that's where I kind of land on whether I'm sharing the word in one capacity or another, or I'm hearing the word in one capacity or another. I think that my own spiritual maturity has allowed me to kind of, have some earthly hurt, maybe, some disappointment, but not really hurt. It's like, God's word he's going to oversee it to make it come true. He's going to keep his own promises. He's going to do, so I can find peace in that. Right. So how I receive and how I deliver is kind of, the thing that is more opportunity. Like this is an opportunity to talk about God, right?
That's right. And
this is a way, in my opinion, to show he exists. Like that conversation with the atheist is I see his proof in you, in your story, and how he belief in him and faith in him and discipleship has transformed us,
right?
And allows us to be blessed, get through some hurt, deal with the things in this world that are just common. So, that's when I hear your story about how God has impacted your life, that affirms his existence, right? It's affirming.
That's right.
Creates assurance. Now that was kind of like the lesson with Pastor Thomas. It's like the assurance of salvation. So I'm a segue a little bit. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we always touch on creativity a little, right? So everybody has a creative outlet, and mine's photography and all that other stuff, right? What's yours?
So, somebody reminded me a few minutes ago this. Bacon.
Bacon.
Baking with the ing, not
bacon, not bacon like
not
the
bacon,
Afro,
but
not the, not
that's an addiction. But
bacon.
I don't.
My bad.
I didn't even realize this, but baking to me is a creative outlet for me, and it's soothing, and it's like everything else that I would normally be thinking about goes out the window because I'm like putting it all into what I'm making.
Yeah.
But even more so is like when people enjoy it, that inspires me to do it, do it more. And then, so what else can I do to be creative with this?
Yeah, right.
So,
when did you start baking?
Well, it was by accident. We were having a lunch event at work, and they wanted everybody to bring something in. So when Renita had her bridal shower, one of the things that the ladies did is they gave her a little index card box with all their favorite recipes in it.
Okay.
So I'm like, what am I going to make? Because I didn't want to buy something. They wanted us all to be creative and make something for the luncheon. Yeah. So I was flipping through, and I found this pound cake recipe.
Okay.
And I said, oh, I'm going to try this. There, you find out that pound cake isn't as easy to make as you think it is. You can have all the ingredients, but there's some.
So Sarah Lee's doing something, right?
Yeah.
Something.
And I remember that people like Miss Debbie, Mama Sue, and they told me how to refine and make that even better. Because on the index card, you had the ingredients, but you needed the other steps, like what to do with the flour, how to soften the butter. Simple things that, make a big difference.
Right.
And Miss Debbie told me a simple thing. She said, you need to separate the egg white from the yolk, and put the yolk in first, when you're mixing the batter, and then put the rest of the egg in it. And I was like, that's just so crazy. Because to me, it was all getting mixed together. Why do you need to But now I see why.
Okay.
Because it just does something different to the cake. Yeah. So every person who gave me like a hint, I just improved on. So that creative piece also involves getting other people's opinions. Okay. It's not always coming from up here.
That's right.
But you say, how do you make this better? So
awesome.
But
man.
so I like baking. I just have to figure out
so what's the most elaborate thing you've made?
I don't know if it's the elaborate, but the most popular is banana pudding.
Okay. All right.
And it's the easiest to make. But I want to make I want to get to making some of that elaborate dessert that you see. But right now I'm sticking with the staples.
So you're doing like the chef apron?
I have an apron, but I don't wear it when I'm baking. But maybe I should.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's it. I'm happy about that, because I do believe everybody has some level, some creative outlet to help them find peace or get away from escape. It's usually a term I use. Movies and other things like that kind of fit in that creativity space for me. When I was younger, it was drawing, penciling. I wanted to be a penciler at Marvel Comics. I think I might have shared that before, but somewhere along the line, photography rose above everything. Yeah. So, I've been doing it since the late 80s.
It's funny. I had a 35 millimeter camera that I bought when I was I think it was at Goodrich, because I was like, and it was, and I started taking black and white pictures, and I was having fun. But then I was like, oh, boy, you got to be serious about it. And for me, it was just, I'm going to take pictures. Right. But it wasn't like, it didn't turn into a hobby for me. Right. But at first I was excited having a black and white camera or pictures. I was taking a lot of pictures, but then I didn't do anything with it. So I admire that you do it.
Everybody's got their thing, man. So I've tasted a few of your cakes, and they were awesome. So I'm glad you're doing it. All right, I'm gonna segue again. Okay, so you've been at the Mouse House for 13,
almost 25 years. 12 and then 12, so 12, almost 25.
25 years. You didn't lose any tenure.
No, they bridge it after you get back after so much time.
Oh, okay, that's good.
So I have like 24. All
right.
Almost 24 years of experience.
So Mo's on the verge of retiring from the civilian service and for the Army. What about you?
Same.
Same?
Yeah.
So at what point do you think you'll pull the trigger?
In about a year or two. I just Just like things I want to get in place first.
Yeah.
And then I can retire, but I'm not retiring from the workforce. I'll just do something different.
Is Orlando it? You're not thinking about going?
Yeah, Orlando's it for us.
All right, good. Because I need to know that, though, so I make sure my friendship circle is very solid.
You and Mo would know if we're moving, but we moved I hope last time that we have to move.
Yeah.
Or that we want to move.
So that said, beyond retirement, what's next? I mean, what do you see yourself doing?
So I want to work again in ministry.
Okay.
I still think about doing church administration.
Yeah.
But I also want to do teaching. Like, we were on Bible study fellowship. That is what I probably miss most is teaching. Because that's where but it goes back. Remember, I wanted to be a math teacher in high school. The teaching part of me never really left.
Okay.
And that's what I want to do.
Right.
But now I have a different focus on what I want to teach. It's not math, it's about teaching people about God. Yeah. So I loved, Monet and I were both teaching kids at the same time at BSF. And I loved it. It's a lot of work, but seeing little ones come to know who Jesus is, they know more. Because these kids today they can hear a song on the radio and almost verbatim sing it back. But how many kids are learning about God at that age? Yeah. I mean, why can't our children learn about God more so than learning a Beyonce song? I'm not saying anything's wrong with Beyonce songs, but I'm just saying knowing about God's going to get them a whole lot more.
You say you talked about grandkids. You have two.
Yeah.
Two girls, right?
Leilani and Micah. Yeah. The little one's a boy.
Okay. Forgive me. Those old age can get to you. Anyway, how is that teaching being delivered on them? Are you taking opportunities to?
Yeah, I need to do more of that though, because Renita and I talked about it, and I talked about how our grandparents faithfully took us to church.
Yeah,
I really want to do that for them.
Yeah,
until their parents get in a place where they feel that it's important.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they love going to church, especially Leilani.
Yeah.
I mean, she would go every week, I think, if we went and got her. Mike is 3. He'll go wherever he thinks we're going to eat or something.
Right. Okay. That's awesome, right? So you get you get opportunities to practice that whole teaching about God on your kids. I remember, it's funny. I know that you love that stuff. I remember early on in Grace Alive, I met you one morning before service on Sunday when we were doing the whole setup thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you were going through the kids and cleaning each toy. Yeah. I think I had this look on my face. It's like, I'm not this guy, Stu. I'm not getting up this early to clean this stuff. They just going to have to catch coals from each other.
Well, that's that was a lesson learned at one community in Dallas. Yeah. It's like there was nothing that anyone was supposed to think was beneath them.
Yeah.
I mean, our pastor stressed service, and I was like, what is wrong with, and I'm not, everybody doesn't have to get there, but I'd say, what is wrong with doing this stuff for the kids, setting up early, getting at church, an hour or 2 hours before service to make sure everything's set up?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's about, can someone come to Christ today?
Yeah.
And if you know that you made some contribution, even just in the atmosphere, you're a perfectionist when it comes to the cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, I don't want something crappy going out on YouTube and people are turned off and they don't even hear the message because what they see doesn't look right. I don't know if that makes sense. But
no. Boy, Donnie Crawford, he always uses, he said, production is supposed, when it comes to church, is not supposed to distract you.
Right.
So you do everything in the preparation to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And to your point, the distraction can become the thing that the devil or whatever uses to keep you away longer than you should, right? So we certainly don't want to be a party to that.
Well, remember, they would say the only thing that should be offensive is the gospel.
It's the gospel.
Not the music, not how we greet people, not if you're walking into a dirty worship center.
Yeah.
Because you're right, that all of a sudden their focus is on, they don't even clean up in here.
Right.
Or nobody greeted me when I walked in. Or I don't understand this music I'm hearing today.
Right.
You know, the devil will have anything to distract people from hearing the gospel because he doesn't want people to come to the saving
no doubt
knowledge.
So, Stu, I appreciate you so much for sitting with me, man. This
You're
was
welcome.
cool.
You know,
You've shared some things that I did not know about you.
Well, you made it comfortable, but you know I'm stressing out doing
I know. That's why I gotta sit down with Stu. At least we can have some fun. Maybe he'll cry for me.
No, you know, it's funny this morning I said, because you know, another thing you were talking about creativity. One of my hobbies is, and probably too much, but I like watching TV.
Yeah.
But I remember when Barbara Waters used to do her specials.
Yeah.
I think she went in with the intent of seeing when she could make somebody cry. Because every interview she did, at the end, the people were crying. Then she would turn to the camera and grin like this, like I got him. So I kept saying, is Les going to try to make me cry today? So that's why
I did want to joke about it a little bit. But no, I'm glad. I'm just glad you sat with me because, you know, I think that
much more fun than I thought it would.
I'm glad because I thought that, you know, this whole podcast thing turned out to be a blessing in disguise. We were just using it to practice the service for others.
Wow.
So, but it turns out to be a lot more fun than, and I never wanted to be in front of the camera either, so I try to ignore all this stuff myself, even though I'm setting up. But I just want to thank you
You're
for
welcome,
being with
brother.
me. And I'll see you soon, man.
I knocked the microphone.
It's okay.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.